AD at Carlsbad High School, and then Ira.
Ira Childress, athletic director at Gulliver Prep. Thanks everybody for joining us. Obviously, it's this meeting is really starting to take off. We've been getting calls and emails from around the country, which is great. We had to be a little bit safer today. Couldn't let everybody in if they didn't have their names because of all the hackers out there. So it's unfortunate, but that's just kind of how we had to do it. Amanda will keep letting a few people in, but we want to get started. We have a special guest that's going to kick us off and really kind of talk about his athletic department and what they're doing from a virtual standpoint and kind of how they're navigating through this COVID-19 situation. Ken Haplin is the vice president for intercollegiate athletics for Winthrop University. And without further ado, Ken, are you there?
I am here, yeah. You guys hear me okay?
We can. Go ahead.
Wonderful. Well, hey, it's great to be with you guys here today. If I understand correctly, the primary candidate for morning or this afternoon games. Story of my career, I'm usually the guy who gets to talk whenever the guy or girl that everybody actually guys, I think just real briefly, we're experiencing the country as far as utilizing Zoom to meet as much as we can. I know it sounds like what you guys are experiencing now that Zoom hit the wave concept, that's been delaying a lot of stuff. And so, as an aside, I also sit on the Division I Council, which is the primary legislative authority for the NADRN-AD. 4 Division I athletic directors, most of whom have their own 2 or 3 administrative support people to get them set up, trying to figure out how to remotely get on a call and then figure out how to debate and vote on legislative details is a heck of a task. But yeah, I would say a few things that I think are pertinent to this group. If I understand correctly, this is a group of high school athletic directors around the nation. You've got a group of student athletes looking at going into college, and I think a big one I would assume impacting a lot of your spring athletes is the impact of the NCAA's legislative vote to grant an additional year of eligibility for all of their senior spring athletes or athletes who expire their final year of eligibility, getting a chance to redo it. Having been on the council, I can speak with great detail on that. Not that it's all pertinent, but one of the big details I will say that I do believe helped each of you and your graduating seniors as they're entering into college, and even your graduating junior or your rising seniors who are going to graduate next year, is most of my colleagues around the country were adamant that it's essential we do not, that institutions be permitted to reduce aid for returning seniors, all the way from matching 100% to what they had the previous year, all the way down to matching 0% or in essentially a non-renewal. And while it's not a great story for a student athlete to look at them potentially having their aid reduced, that was a huge opportunity to manage the real fiscal challenges of the amount of aid that was going to be committed should every senior choose to return and have to get matched where they were. That's going to create a big balloon with some of the national letters of intent that were already signed coming in. And so by giving schools that freedom and flexibility, you've got schools looking at some seniors not returning, and then for those that are returning, the option to reduce their aid to make room for some of this incoming student athlete talent. And so that actually created more breathing room for a lot of your graduating student athletes and your rising seniors. And I think another thing to keep an eye on that we've been keeping an eye on, especially in the sport of baseball, is how the Major League Baseball draft is going to impact all that. Because if the Major League Baseball draft gets delayed, now you got a lot of those juniors on college rosters with really elite talent that we're expecting to go that either are still in the roster or get carried forward a year longer than coaches anticipated. And it's just safe to say that an intercollegiate coach at a high major for baseball manages their roster differently than a mid-major or low major, depending on how they anticipate their juniors to fare for the draft. So that's created some complexities. But, with that, what rides beneath all of that, I would say, is the care for our student athletes. And I know that's an experience that we all share alike, is that every single one of those students is a part of our family and somebody whose lives we rely on. And so, for us, there was a lot of work just getting our student athletes home. We have several student athletes that are international, some from China, some from Italy, that didn't get to go home. We have one student athlete from China who finally got on a plane today to finally get to go home. And after 3 flights to get to China, he's going to have to sit in a quarantine apartment for 2 weeks before he's allowed to actually be transported back to his home. And so you have situations like that where your primary care is the concern for your student athletes. But as we go through this and the longer this COVID experience starts to go, you start to really wonder, well, how's this going to impact the long term? What are fall sports going to look like? How much time, even though Winthrop isn't a football school, we still have fall sports, and student athletes need time to get up to speed for their competitive season. And I can say, I'm assuming the entire world is keeping their eye on how college football rolls, because college football is kind of the biggest domino that impacts everybody else's sports. So even though we don't have football, I've been talking to a lot of my colleagues on their thoughts as to how the football season is going to go. And one thing I would say, if you were to ask me to put money on it, even though I don't condone gambling, money on where it landed, what I would say is I believe that college football is too important to our ecosystem to not find a way to get it to happen. So I think at worst it will be delayed. If it gets extremely delayed, that's going to be because of things that are drastically beyond our control. But I believe that there are college presidents who are direly committed to making sure that we do have a college football season within the safety of human life, if that makes sense. And so there's some really creative minds working to make that happen. And, if that happens, that, what will follow then, the NCAA's biggest financial wherewithal depends on the NCAA basketball tournament. So if football can happen, well, then the basketball tournament can happen. And if those two things can happen, I believe a lot of this can, after about a year and a half, begin to level set again from an athletics standpoint. But yeah, outside of that, that's essentially what's impacting our world and keeping us busy is implementing the eligibility piece. The safety of our student athletes is first and foremost, including their mental health, because at this point this is a huge part of their identity, especially in college. And then finally, making sure that we're preparing ourselves as best as possible to integrate them into what we consider to be normal as they get back on campus. So those are just kind of some high points. And I mean, I'm happy to be involved in your guys' experience. I think it's awesome that you guys are doing this. And if I can answer any.
Yeah, that's great. If anyone has any specific questions, I know we had some questions last week regarding students and making that transition. I did speak with one of my colleagues at the NCAA last night, and he said he's going to come on with us in a couple of weeks. He did not want to come on right now because he said there were a lot of things that they were still trying to sort out at the NCAA national office. He said he needed about 10 days to get all those answers kind of sorted out. That way, and so in a couple of weeks, he will come on this show with us, and he runs the NCAA Eligibility Center. His name is Glenn Terry. So he's going to come on soon and really go through all of those things. But right now, he said, listen, Ira, we don't have everything ironed out yet, but a lot of things have to be taken into consideration from an eligibility standpoint. Amanda, do we have some questions there for Mr. Haplin, Dr. Haplin in the queue?
Do you think that any college conferences will restrict eligibility waivers? What's your thought on that?
Eligibility waivers, I guess to some extent, are you saying eligibility waivers for incoming students or eligibility waivers for fifth-year seniors and graduate students?
I guess it could be either, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I guess, with the schools closing, I don't know how they handle that. I know a lot of colleges look at that second semester of the senior year to make sure that the kids are not, so had they talked about that? Like, what is your thought on that?
Well, you actually bring up a really good point, and something that I wanted to make sure and mention on the call that I forgot to until you mentioned that. as you guys are counseling your juniors and seniors as they're looking for college opportunities, something to keep in mind, especially for some of you, I'm sure, have great students who have great academic performance, but maybe didn't do too well in the ACT or the SAT. More and more colleges, and Winthrop just voted this on Monday, is to at least temporarily move into a test optional environment where applications could be considered with or without the SAT or the ACT. I will tell you that most academicians agree that there's almost no correlation with collegiate success and your performance on one of those two entrance exams. And so there's more and more leniency on considering admissions to college without that SAT and ACT. So if you have students interested in college, keep an eye out for schools that have put out press releases lately that they're even considering a temporary SAT and ACT test optional admissions process. The other thing I would say is, both for incoming students and for transfers and whatnot, it's most likely going to happen here in June that the Division I Council is going to vote to allow a 1-year Division I to Division I transfers without having to sit out a year. And so I'm not guaranteeing, but I'm coming pretty close to saying that the time is coming when every student athlete will get sort of one free pass to transfer. And what I do know is every waiver in the meantime associated with the coronavirus right now, I can't speak for the NCAA, but I do know what the NCAA has hinted at is any waiver justification that uses the word coronavirus is highly likely going to receive fair support. I don't think anybody wants anything to do with the headline that states that my process towards or through college was diminished because of the coronavirus and the NCAA wouldn't uphold my eligibility because of that. So not knowing the specifics, I do believe that there's going to be a lot of leniency to any eligibility waivers that are submitted that have a student impacted by any way, shape, or form, which by the coronavirus, which I'm fairly certain will be all, since this is a global pandemic.
Great. Amanda, you're muted. Great. I know you got to run. Any other questions before Dr. Happen has to jump off? Amanda, is there anything? Did you have see anything else?
No, I really appreciate you joining us. I know you're busy, like all of us, and it's so great to hear different perspectives. And I really appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, and again, if any of the really cool people in the business can't make it in the future, I'm usually available. So always happy to engage and share whatever I know and just be a part of a growing network of people who, one thing I've said a few times, I'll just part with this. I'm a firm, like the coronavirus wasn't taken seriously until the NBA lockout. And what that meant in my heart, in my mind, is that it was, even though sport in our world is technically extra and this is life and death, sport is so powerful that it was the thing that made us start taking this seriously. And I truly believe that sport will be the evidence that we're really back to being the country that we're so proud of being. And so, administrators and coaches whose livelihood is about sport and about what we can teach our young people through sport, I think is essential. And so the first opportunity we all have to get back on the court, back on the field, is going to be something meaningful and significant in our country. And so I just love sharing that with you guys. And if I can ever do anything in the future to help any of you, please let me know. I'm happy to.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Really appreciate that. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right, Amanda, do you want to start out with the agenda, and then we can kind of go through that and answer all the questions that may be out there?
Sounds good. So I see a lot of questions coming in, and we'll get through those, some of those under the hot topics as well. But the first was the recap. So a lot of people, the last few weeks, we've talked about social media and how to help our seniors, senior weeks and senior banquets, which are a little further down. I've been seeing some great stuff on social media, people doing senior blasts and videos. I know that in San Diego, there's a few TV stations doing stuff for seniors, which is great. Obviously, Scott Van Pelt on ESPN is doing something as well for high school. But I think one of the big things, and it kind of leads into our first discussion, Ira, is the mental health part of all of this. Like, It's not just the mental health of your athletes and your coaches, it's the mental health of all of us, like the ADs. Like, how are you guys doing with it? How are you handling it? And what's your thought on that, Ira?
Yeah, the mental health aspect is very, very big. And you know, one of the things we're doing is we're talking about that. We're still doing our Zoom practices, but we're talking about mental health on a daily basis. And that's, we start our practices off by really, you know, seeing how everybody's doing, working through that, you know, and you know, concerns or things that are on their mind, or if they just want to talk, or whatever the case may be. That's how we start out our practices when we practice. So our coaches are really locked in on that. Our counselors are aware, and they're still up and running as well. But because a lot of our student athletes are really, really down. So we want to stay active, and we want to keep them engaged. And I think that the mental health piece is really important. But I also think what's important to the mental health piece is what we're doing right now is connecting. You know, and I tell our coaches that we don't want to have practice where we send you an email and we send stuff via email and say, hey, go get them. You know, that's not what we want to do. We want to do just like this. We want to have Zoom, and we want to be interactive, and we want them to see their friends. They want them to see their teammates, want them to see their coaches. And, you know, when they do the physical stuff, everybody can see. So to me, that really helps uplift spirits versus just doing stuff and saying, hey, you know what, go get them, you know, send an email and that type of thing. So the interaction piece, I think, is very, very big for the mental health.
Well, and I know yesterday I was on a podcast with a group, Headset Mentality, and they gave me a list of 10 things to be aware of with your student athletes. So I'll put that out. I'll put it on our website. I'll blast that via Twitter or, later, but just things to be aware of it. And like Ira said, I think having that one-on-one, I know when I first did the first team Zoom, you know, everybody was like this. No one wanted to see anybody. You could tell they were kind of sad. By the end of the meeting, everybody was laughing, joking, smiling, bantering with their coaches. So if you haven't done that yet, I really highly suggest it. At least a shout out to everybody. How are you doing? We're here for you. Because right now it's a big time for, in my opinion, for ADs, because people are looking at you as leaders and what can you do to help them through it. And that's what's great about this, is that we can all kind of help each other figure out what's the best way to work for you, you know. And but they're looking, and I think even if you look at a lot of the administrators, they don't know how to handle it either. I think this has shown how big athletics is to our communities and to everything. Really, we have no Major League Baseball, we have no NBA. And so, you know, he's right. We have to build those relationships. And that's what's important about what we're doing here, is this is how we help. This is how we help those athletes with getting through it. And the mental health, I mean, the seniors that aren't having their senior season, that's got to be a tough thing. And it's, again, uncharted waters for any of us. So anything we can do to reach out to help them. Ira?
And I would say, even if your sports season is canceled, don't just say, hey, you know what, the season's canceled, so we're all hands off. I would still have my coaches interacting with the student athletes, interacting with the seniors. You know, I know we're going to get into talking about senior awards and stuff like that later, but I would really have them still interacting, because again, it's important for their mental health that they're connected with their coaches and their student athletes. So even if they've canceled your season, I, as an AD, I wouldn't say, hey, you know what, the season's canceled, so we're going to cut off all communication. It's time now is the time to really start working hard and going through it.
So one of the things, Christina Hunt, are you out there?
Yes, I'm here.
So Christina talked a little bit about what they're doing in her area. Christina, go ahead and share if you would.
So we had a meeting with our league on Monday, and some of the ideas thrown out there were about senior recognition. And one of the schools said that the softball coach is doing a drive-by with the rest of the team, and of course parents, to all of the senior houses. So that was pretty cool.
Great. You know, I love it. That's a great idea. And I know that here we've seen drive-by birthdays and people, you know, beeping in their horns and trying to at least do the social distancing, but also giving them what they want as well. And then Chris Hobbs is also talking about senior celebrations. Chris, are you there?
Hey, Amanda.
Chris.
Amanda and Ira, you guys are just doing an awesome job. Thank you for what you're doing here. For us, so I'm the director of athletics at the Kings Academy in West Palm Beach, Florida. I'm about 90 minutes from my friend Ira there. And so a couple of things we've tried to do in this time is state our objectives pretty clearly, and whatever we're trying to accomplish, like just to be real conscious of what our goals are, to keep us focused in a really disorienting time right now. That's helped a ton. I was on a Zoom meeting with our coaches and other directors in our department last night, and we spent a little bit of time just talking about, hey, what's the objective for this, that, or the other. So that said, we're doing an entire, I guess you could say, a week-long event via social media, where the objective is to make our senior spring student athletes and their parents feel like we went all out. And so we're handling it almost logistically like you would handle your normal senior event, with announcements going out days in advance. And then on the day of the event, we're going to do some video drops of either the coach sharing some fond thoughts about the kids, or we've got an assistant AD that's just like a school spirit nut. He's going to be sprinting the facility of whatever that particular senior day celebration is, holding the flag, screaming and yelling. We're turning the lights on the stadium for whatever team we're honoring that night, and doing some live look-ins on the stadium, again with this nut job assistant AD that we got, doing some goofy stuff. Obviously we got senior photos that'll be going out, and then I'll conclude. That'll happen, like, for example, on Monday night would be girls lacrosse, and we'll announce that 2 days in advance so that people kind of show up on social media, if you will, for that. And then we're going to do the same thing for boys lacrosse the next day, and baseball the next day, and softball, and so on, therefore. And then we'll conclude the entire week with a message from me directly to our senior student athletes from the spring season. I typically end each senior ceremony with a pretty, I guess, a speech that's become kind of trend now in our athletic department. I'll just actually do that via social media to everyone. So, and again, the objective is whatever it takes to make our kids feel special right now, in a time when they're going through something that probably no senior class has ever gone through. And losing out on some stuff that no senior class would ever imagine they had lost out on. So really just trying to keep that objective in front of us has kind of fueled our fire for how can we really hit the ball out of the park for the kids.
Agreed. All right. Thanks so much, Chris. I appreciate you chiming in. So to basically with those seniors, and that kind of leads us into the next piece. You have the mental health part, you have the seniors weeks and banquets, a lot of great ideas also coming up on the chat if you want to take a look at that. Ira, what are you guys doing there?
Yeah, I got one thing. We're doing our same thing, similar with the seniors. We're gonna do our ceremonies via Zoom, and it's gonna be broadcasted live via YouTube, so all the parents around the country can see it, of the seniors. But the one thing we also are doing today, which is kind of unique, and I won't take credit for this, our lacrosse coach actually came up with this, and he did a great job. We're doing our first ever virtual lacrosse game. We're going to play a lacrosse game virtually versus another team. And how it's set up, everybody's going to initially join via Zoom. And then once they get on via Zoom, they'll talk about things, both teams. And then they'll do different tasks at their house. Like some people will shoot, how many shots can they make into the net from this angle? Some people would, push-ups, how many different tasks each team, and you get points for each task. And at the end of this game, this hour-long game, whoever has the most points wins. And both teams are excited about it today. They're talking trash on social media. And so it kind of gives them something to compete against another school virtually in the comforts of their own home while still social distancing. So we'll see how it goes. I'll report back next week and let everybody know how it goes. But I know our football coach is now interested in doing this with other schools and stuff like that. So this competition, between our school and this other school is really heating up in lacrosse. So we're looking forward to it today and seeing how that goes.
Sure. So I know that there's a lot of questions going on. Just so you guys know, I'm adding them to Hot Topics at the end. So don't think I'm ignoring. I'm just adding them to the agenda at the end. The next part a lot of people have reached out about is athletic trainer expectations. You know, what do we do with our athletic trainers? Obviously, there's not a lot they can do at this point. I would say if they're working with someone already, that they continue that via virtual with workouts and strength training, or however the rehab process is. We're very lucky. We have an amazing athletic trainer who actually does rehab with everybody. So she's kind of a PT as well. But there's not a lot for them to do. I know for us, we're still paying ours, which you should. If your district is saying no, they should be paying them. Ira, what's your thought on that?
Yeah, I think, I know it's tough. We're still paying ours right now, and we're in a fortunate situation, but I understand it, Amanda. I mean, everybody may not have that option, to do that during tough times. But it's really, like you mentioned, there's nothing really for the trainers to do at this point, unless they're doing some type of rehab with student athletes, where they can do the rehab over video and they can do it at home. And then with trainer stuff, you got to be very careful with the video stuff too, because it's such a private thing. So that's something you got to really, really be careful with. So yeah, honestly, there's really not a lot for trainers to do right now. If you do end up having to stop paying them or let them go or furloughing them or whatever the case may be, make sure you can keep that relationship, because ultimately you will need them back, or you'll need somebody back as you go, as you start up here in the next couple of months. And for what reason, for some reason or another, I want to say this. I do feel like we are going to get an opportunity to start in the fall. I mean, no one's told me this. Obviously, I don't have any more inside information than you do on this, but I just have a feeling that, to me, if the pro sports teams go and the colleges figure it out, I think the high school is a lot easier, because we don't have an abundance of fans. We can say, hey, you know what? Football is only going to be essential to families, and we have a big enough stadium. We can spread the families out so they're not close to each other and that sort of thing. Obviously, the teams are small. There's different things we can do at the high school level that I think would make it more feasible to have it, even more so than the NFL or college or things of that nature. So that's something that I think ultimately will happen, but we'll have to wait and see. Amanda, if you want to continue on with the agenda and questions.
Yeah, it's getting some good. Mark Schaefer said that their AT athletic trainer actually sets office hours for virtual appointments. I think that's a great idea. So that might be something I even add to mine. I know she does some now, but possibly setting those office hours are a good thing. And then Sharon Grancy said they're working on professional development, which is another good thing. John Amosa says they're deploying their ATC out to help with other parts of the virtual school sections. So I guess that just depends on if your athletic trainer is a teacher or not. Corey, golf, they're developing EAPs for the venues. So I know in California we have to have those up in every place, the emergency action plans. So I don't know how that is across the country, but we have them posted in every venue. So the stadium, the arena, tennis courts, baseball, softball, and all of those. We can kind of continue. I know one of the questions too is the fall sports. We'll get to that when we talk about hot topics at the end. But one of the things I wanted to touch on the last time was the NADRN-AD classes and training. I don't know if any of you have been on that site or seen that, but it's a CMAA designation that you can have after your name. They have a lot of good information, talk about legal stuff, and it really helped me when I first got the job to take some of those courses, because everybody tells you 50 different things, and it's good to kind of actually hear it, what it actually is. Everybody wants to help and everybody wants to make it easier, usually. But a lot of times when you're new, they kind of just throw you in the fire. So the NADRN-AD classes are really good for that. Ira, have you checked out any of those?
I have in the past, and they are really good. So I would recommend those, and just any education you can get in this crazy athletic world. I've been in this a long time, and there's always something even, 20 years in almost, it always surprises me, and I've been at the college level, high school, all levels. There's always something that's like, oh, wow, this is different. Or I haven't seen this before, so just any education you can get, I think is very important. And obviously the time we're going into right now is ever changing. So these calls and these things that we're doing here, I think are critical.
Agreed. Agreed. A lot of people have said, I haven't really heard anything negative about those classes. I've heard really good things. So if you can't, make sure you check them out if you are, because now we kind of all have time to do that. The next, again, was the spring coaches pay survey. I will shoot that out to everybody after this meeting, but an overabundance of everybody paying their spring coaches. And I think if your district is not, this is something that you can use to kind of have that conversation of, if we're going to keep good coaches, we need to continue to pay them. They are, a lot of the work they do is before the season starts. The season is the fun part, excuse me. So I think you can use that. Ira, what's your thought on that one?
Yeah, I think you need to continue to pay your coaches. I mean, our coaches are doing a lot of Zoom stuff right now with our student athletes. So we're definitely continuing to pay them. And I don't think you want to set the precedent, of, hey, we're going to, cut you and not pay you, because they may be really strong coaches and they may end up somewhere else next year because of, because of that choice. So I would definitely continue to pay them. And as far as, things that we can do during this time, Amanda, I know you put all the information on our website as well. You want to give that out? And then I think I sent out yesterday a checklist for ADs to go through right now during this time. I don't know if that's up there or not, but it's on my Twitter feed. If anyone wants to look at that, it just kind of goes through a lot of the things that maybe ADs need to look at.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting because a lot of people are saying good stuff. A lot of them have taken the LTC classes through, and then you have the NFHS too. You can go on and take stuff as well. And I know a lot of our districts require that. I know we have to do sudden cardiac arrest. We have to do concussion. We have to do the coaches, the really long coaches video. I don't know if you guys have to do that, but they love that. It's fantastic. You can actually make breakfast, dinner, and lunch and still be watching it. But there's a lot of good stuff happening for sure. So the spring coaches pay survey, that's going to go out after. I'll share that with all of you so you kind of see. And then Ira, now we're kind of at the hot topics. So one is, the concern is the fall season getting canceled. Are people concerned with that? You touched on it a little bit. My view is, I kind of agree with you, Ira. I think that they would really, really, really have to think about that. That is the biggest money for most schools. And even if it means no fans at the beginning, you have practices where you're distancing away, there's got to be or everybody wears a face mask when they come in. I mean, there's got to be ways to make it work. And I know I'm probably speaking for a lot of us, is I'm really hoping that they figure out a way to not cancel. I mean, I think a lot of it depends on what happens between now and June. But my hope, I'm actually the opposite of what I've been reading. I'm about 70% that we are going to have fall, and maybe 30 that there's a question about it. So Ira, what's your thought on that?
I agree. There's some positive things coming out of, that's coming out. Some places are reaching their peak, which is good. I just think by the fall we'll have a better handle on it in the next 3 or 4 months, than we do right now. I'm not saying it's going to be perfect. I don't think it's going to be like it was normal, but I do think there will be a way to, to play it. I think the NFL will continue, and I think NCAA will continue, and I think high school will continue. It may not look like it looks right now, but I do think it will continue the next 3 to 4 months. So maybe call me an internal optimist. Maybe that's me, but I do feel like it will continue.
And then the second one is GPAs. So people were wondering, a lot of schools are going to pass fail, and how is that going to affect GPAs? I know from our standpoint, they're not, from my school standpoint in district, they're not going to allow that to affect GPAs negatively. What's your thought, Ira? Have you heard about that?
Yeah, I heard about that too. And I think most districts are under that. Everyone wants to do right now what's best for kids as always, but even more so right now. So I don't expect any district to let the pass fail negatively impact the student athlete. I mean, we want to try to help them, and I also think I talked to my guy from the NCAA, as I mentioned earlier last week, and or just yesterday, and he was saying, he didn't flat out tell me, but essentially he was alluding to, we're going to try to do everything we can to help students through this, basically. And so I know the NCAA doesn't get a lot of favor from people, and sometimes for good reason. But doing it with all these rules and everything, I think they're going to try to relax them a little bit to really help, because everybody's in the same boat. So you like the ADs said earlier, you don't want to be the NCAA or anybody that's saying, you know what, the coronavirus really impacted the student athlete, and we didn't try to help.
Right.
So I think we're going to be good there, Amanda.
I think I want to have Kevin on in a second. Kevin, are you there? So Kevin brought up, okay, great. Hey, Kevin, you brought up a really cool idea, I thought, that is turning on your stadium lights to kind of represent your spring sports. Can you go into that a little bit, Kevin?
Well, I've heard it's happening in Texas and Colorado. That's where we found the idea. So we're talking about it in tiny little Redmond, Oregon, about doing it on Friday nights. Some of us, I know, have the ability to program our lights from our phones or whatever, and that makes it easier. One of our schools has that ability, one doesn't. So that's kind of.
So Kevin, are they talking like, a minute? Are they talking like a minute per, like what?
Talking about like a minute per day that the kids have missed. And so that would obviously increase as we keep going, but a way of whether high school kids are driving by or their parents or whatever, we let them know that that's on for them to recognize them and remember them.
I love that idea. And then I also saw you wrote an article for the NIAA. What did you write about, Kevin?
Well, I just talked about what our approach might be emotionally as well as practically. I know Gary Stevens is looking for some things to get together a pretty quick NIAAA publication. Mm-hmm. And so I'm willing to send that to anybody that wants to. I'll put my email address out there if you want a copy of it. I'd be glad to share it with you.
Great. I really appreciate that, Kevin. I appreciate that. I think it's a very cool thing, the light idea. Again, I don't know what districts will think about that. I think I'm probably going to implement that. I think it's a fantastic way to recognize those athletes and remind them, that we are in this together. Ira, what's your thought on that?
I agree. I think anything we can do to really show student athletes, we're together, I think is very important. So, the challenge to all the ADs out there is let's keep being creative. Let's keep being creative. Let's keep sharing. Let's keep using each other's ideas. No one cares about, who gets the credit for them. Let's keep being creative and really being creative for our student athletes to try to help them. I know content creation is talked about a lot, but I'm thinking about that more and more every day, is how can I create more content for our athletic department to really enhance and help our student athletes experience during the COVID-19 situation. So I'm in content creation mode all the time right now, because that's what we have. We don't have the games. We can't play, so how can we do other things to create different content to help our student athletes, have a better experience during this time?
What's interesting is, and I don't know about anybody else, but I feel like this time also those athletes that are the elite that really want to play at the next level are really going to kind of step up their game, right? It's got to be self-motivated. They don't have a coach. They don't have someone every day grinding and telling them what to do. It's I spoke with, like last week, we spoke with Coach Kelly about recruiting and how important that is to make sure those kids are being self-advocates and having those discussions. And I know for me, I've reached out to a lot of the athletes and said, hey, what are you doing? Are you doing anything? Because I usually, who your leaders are on your campus, who your big captains are, who your kid that's always on the field or always in the gym, who they are. And so you reach out to them as kind of those leaders, and they post things on Twitter and they post things showing what they're doing And it kind of sets the tone for a lot of your athletes at your school. So that's another really good thing, I think, is reaching out and having those connections with those kids that could help. The last thing, Ira, that I have on the list is spring sports letters for new players. Obviously we didn't have a season very long. I know my thought on that is if they played and they made varsity, they're getting a letter. Honestly, that's how I feel with spring. I'm actually going to deliver once my school is actually open where I can walk in my office. I'm going to grab letters and I'm going to print the certificates, and I'm actually going to drive to every senior's house and deliver them myself. And the reason I'm doing that is because they need to know that I care, that they're important to me. Yes, we have a lot of athletes, and we have 1,600 athletes, probably 800 in the spring. But what is that? Maybe 100. So I do 20 a day. It's not like I don't have enough time right now. So, yeah. And am I crazy? Maybe. But you know what? If it matters for one of them, then it makes it worth it. And I want them to know that I appreciate them, and that I think they deserve it. What's your thought on that, Ira?
I think that's personal. That personal touch is amazing. And I know I got gas like 3 weeks ago, and I still have a full tank almost. So so you'll be okay on gas going around. But no, I think that's a great idea, and I think the personal touch things are really, really important. With the seniors, we're going to try to do some unique things with our seniors as well. Because again, there's as we always talk about in this business and in all businesses, there's no do-overs. You know what I mean? They don't get the chance to come back and do this again. I mean, so we must max out for them, and unfortunately, they won't get to go out in a traditional way. But we can really try to make it, as special as we can for them. So.
Well, and it's funny because some of the questions are, what do you do for certificates? Because usually they come from admin or from ASB or whatever. You know what? Google is an amazing thing. Google certificates, make your own, make it creative, drop in your logo. At this point, and I think all of us have had the same, the parent that didn't get the certificate. It's very, very important for them. And you know what? If it matters and it puts a smile on their face during this time, that's really all that kind of matters, and we miss the seasons, but I also look at this time as it's giving those kids an opportunity to also take a breath, because the stress that these kids are under nowadays is so incredible that maybe this is the universe's way of saying just everybody needs to relax and take a breath, which is not easy for me, but
Right.
but for these kids, turning it into a positive, because they're looking at us, like I said before, they're looking at us as their leaders to how is she handling it? How is he handling it? And they kind of follow our lead. So if we're okay, they're going to be okay. If they know we care, then they're going to be all right.
Right. I think you're exactly right. So are there any other questions out there, man? Are you seeing other?
Yeah, one of the things that came out too, obviously some people can't do the light thing. Their district says yes or no. I think, again, I think mental health is another one that keeps getting brought up. I do have some resources I can throw out there. Again, we try really hard not to, ever go into buy this or buy that. But I can throw some stuff on the website. I'll definitely throw out the top 10 items as well. And then I know for some of the females, someone brought up a live stream for female athletes on April 11th. Billie Jean King is hosting it, so that'll be a really cool thing. And you know what I love, I have to say, Ira, is I love that all the states seem to be doing Zooms on their own, which is fantastic. Take anything you can take from this meeting, Ira and I take, and we bring to our own. I know the San Diego CIF section reached out to me, so I'll be doing a presentation at our meeting. And I just think it's so valuable to hear everything that you have to say. And then even with the trainers, and somebody brought up strength and conditioning and what ideas you have for that. There's so many different apps. There's so many different things you can find for that. And there's some great resources in the chat for that as well. For us, everything obviously is virtual, for you too. So I think people have to be more creative. And other than that, I think that's pretty much what we have. I think that people have asked about maybe possibly a sports psychologist having a conversation on here
Yep.
to what we could do. I think that's a fantastic idea too.
Yep. I have one of those, Amanda, that could come on. And the one thing I wanted to share really quick is that next week we're gonna have an amazing guest. We have amazing guests lined up for next week, so try to get in early because once we get to whatever time, I think it's going to be back to 1 next week. But once we get to that time, 1 Eastern time, Amanda. Once we get to that time, that'll be it. We won't let anybody else in. So try to get in early next week. We'll have amazing guests, somebody you don't want to miss. And then also we will try to bring a sports psychologist on at some point. And then also down the road, we will have the NCAA, our official on from the NCAA. So we're gonna have a lot of different people on. The other thing I think that's helpful is continue to spread the word about this event on social media. I know several ADs reached out to me and said, "Oh, I didn't know anything about this event. I'm glad I saw it on Twitter. I'm glad somebody shared it because then now I can join next week." So that's how we continue to get the word out to all the people who want to be a part of this. So if you can continue to share the word about this meeting on social media. Again, we're just trying to help people consistently. Amanda.
And I think one of the other things too is I know some groups are doing coach meetings. Like yesterday in San Diego, they had 60 head football coaches from our county that all kind of met. And I think their biggest message was stay home and stay safe so we can play in the fall. And that's their biggest message to their football kids, who play multiple sports. So, I think I know that Michael Gross is setting up one for softball head coaches in San Diego. And so if you're a coach or one of your head coaches or that lead person, have them set up a meeting with the coaches, because again, the sports community and all of our communities are so huge. We get that message out that we need to stay home and stay safe. Hopefully everything can level out and we can get back to, everything that we know and we're used to. So Ira, anything else from you?
No, I'm just proud of what this group is doing. Let's continue to build on it. And remember, like this is not a fad or something. I know everybody knows this. It's not going to go away. This is going to be here for the next at least 3 or 4 months and maybe longer. So this is going to be our new normal. So let's keep embracing it and keep trying to help our student athletes and coaches be successful as much as we can be. Amanda?
The biggest thing too is that if you know someone that couldn't get into this meeting, I know that we had a little we had it tighter this time, so we didn't get bombed at the end. But please make sure that they go to nationaladresource.com. Please make sure that they click on, there's a link right on the front page, and it says if you want to be added to the list, click the Google form. The contact form is something if you have a question. The Google form is actually the form you want to fill out. So that you can get on the list. And that's how you guys got your email invite and the communications that'll go out after this as well. So please apologize to them because we always want everybody here. But please let them know, obviously we didn't want someone crashing, so we got lucky again, and it seemed to have worked. So thank you guys all so much for joining us. And again, the website is nationaladresource.com. I'll put it in the chat as well so that everybody can see that. And then Ira, any sending thoughts for you?
No, let's keep fighting a good fight and look for all the stuff we're going to be putting out on social media. Feel free to help and share that with that information. And like Amanda said, stay tuned to the website. And we're going to keep working together as a unit here, AD unit from across the country, and continue to help our student athletes and coaches be successful virtually.
One of the things I said last week on Twitter is, we're all strong. You have to be strong to be in our jobs, but we are stronger together. So, I'm proud to be an AD. I'm proud, and it's inspiring for me to see all of your faces and all of the amazing things that you guys all bring to this meeting. So I appreciate you all here. And Ira, it's always a pleasure doing something with you. And we hope to see all of you guys next Wednesday. And thank you so much for joining us.
Take care. See you next Wednesday.
Bye. See you next week.